Hello everyone, welcome to this property market update for Noosa for March 2023. So we've just knocked over the first 3 months of the year, and we've got some historical data to look back on since December 2022. So we'll be able to have a good look at what's been happening in the Noosa marketplace. So if you are a home buyer or investor and you propose to buy sometime in the near future, you're going to get some really good value out of what we're going to cover here today, and it's going to give you some good context. It's going to be really good in terms of data driven information so you can make a well-informed decision before jumping in and buying your next home or investment property. Stick around. So this has been proudly brought to you by Sunshine Life Buyers Agency. My name is Troy Silvacini, owner and head of research. We have a Noosa based office and are actively buying property now in the region under our brand Sunshine Life Buyers Agency. So if you are a home buyer or investor and you feel as though you are someone that might need help navigating this marketplace, feel free to reach out to me and the team. More than happy to have an initial discussion to see if we might be able to add value to your investment journey. So, as I said before, what we want to do is break down the market, and now that we have some historical data, and really unpack what's going on here. And the data is really going to paint a picture for us to see what exactly is going on and whether or not there is an optimal buy window here if you are an investor or home buyer, or if you are just someone that just wants to know what's going on. So the various data points we like to look at to diagnose and temp check what's going on in the marketplace consist of what's happening on the supply side and then what's happening on the demand side. So we like to look at various data points such as what the median price change has looked like over the last 3 months, what are the stock levels and listing volumes, inventory levels look like on the supply side. On the demand side, we look at things such as days on market, absorption rates, vacancy rates, median rent changes, and then we also like to finish off with a bit of a summary around what exactly is going on there so you guys can take that information and then go out and make an informed purchase decision. So if we were to start off looking at what's sort of happened over the last 3 months in terms of Noosa's median house price, we can see here that the median house price in Noosa as of March 2023 is currently 1,600,000, and this is actually still the same from 1,600,000 in January 2023. So the median house price is essentially starting to flatline in the last 3 months. That's very interesting to know that the median house price is starting to flatline. And actually, if we do look at this graph here, it certainly is telling us that the market is basically flatlined now for a very long period of time, and we haven't really seen a steep incline in terms of what's going on with the median house price here for some time in Noosa. So when markets generally stagnate or flatline, we kind of know that they might be entering into a potential retraction period here, or the demand side essentially has sort of fallen away or fallen off a cliff here, and the demand isn't enough to keep up with the velocity of listings. But we'll dive into to have a look at what's exactly been happening on the supply side and the demand side before I make any further diagnoses here about the market. But we can certainly see here that over the last 3 months there hasn't been an increase in price nor a decrease, and it's idling around that $1.6 million. I always say when I do these updates is that I don't have a crystal ball, nor does anyone out there in the marketplace, so we can't really make any accurate predictions on where this median house price might go. We can look at the historical data, and it's told us that Noosa has done well over a long period of time, but however, during this short period in terms of making any real life predictions, I don't have a crystal ball there. So if you are an investor or home buyer out there, just be mindful that I'm not going to make any assumptions here as to where this median house price will be going in the immediate future. All I can have a look at is what the data is telling us, and then maybe try and break it down from there. But yeah, that's what's going on with the median house price, $1.6 million, and it's been stagnant for the last 3 months in Noosa. We had a look at what's been happening on the supply side. So we usually start off by looking at what the stock levels are initially and what the listing volume does look like on the supply side. How many properties have come on the marketplace each month for the last 3 months. And we can see here that in Noosa, current stock levels are sitting at 0.4%, which means that there were approximately 127 houses currently listed for sale in Noosa during March, and it's actually up from 85 or 0.3% in December 2022. So we're in March now, 2023, and in December 2022, we've seen an uplift of the best part of 1%, and that represents, I'd probably say, approximately 40 new listings since December. As in terms of if we were to benchmark that against December, there's been an additional 40 new listings, and we can see here from the graph, there's been a significant uplift. So we've certainly seen stock increase in a marketplace where it might have been relatively low through in December and late last year in 2022, and even previous years and months. We can start to see there that those listing volumes or those stock levels are starting to go up around the long-term average of around 0.4 or 5% on average. That's sort of been the long-term average where listing volumes have sat around that for a long period of time in and around Noosa. But yeah, listing volumes sit at 0.3%, and we've certainly seen a jump here in new supply. So the market certainly was tight in and around that Christmas and New Year period, and now we've started to see a lot of new stock come onto the marketplace and the market be injected with a whole bunch of new listings, the best part of an additional 1% in Noosa. So 127 listings currently available for purchase in March. However, is this listing velocity or volume enough to sustain the demand side? We'll have a look at what that's telling us shortly. So we can see here that the inventory levels currently sit at 1.8 months, which correlates to roughly around 7 weeks. And this is increasing from 1 month or 4 weeks in December 2023. So interesting, we've had an increase in listing velocity and then an increase in inventory in terms of its overall inventory. And with the inventory, the difference between the inventory pool and the listing volumes, you just need to make sure that you distinguish the two. All the inventory levels are telling us is that for all of the properties that are coming onto the market, there is a velocity of them that are selling, but there's always this rolling inventory pool of properties that sit on the market each month. So there might be 127 listings for that particular month, but only 100 of those sell. So the remaining 27 remain in the inventory pool, then that rolls on to the next month. And if 100 sell and 27 remain, then that inventory pool looks like 53 or whatever it is overall. So that's the difference between the listing volumes and then the inventory levels. And now that we've seen those listing volumes increase and those inventory levels increase, we might be looking at a market here where the demand is not high enough to sustain the current listing velocity, and that could be a reason why that median house price has essentially been flatlined over the last couple of months in Noosa. So if we poked our head over and looked at what's been happening now on the demand side, we can see here that in terms of days on market, it's one of the really good metrics we like to look at when we want to diagnose and temp check what's been happening on the demand side. And days on market, all that essentially means is how long is it taking for a property to sell? And in Queensland, on average, the average period tends to be between 30 to 45 days. And we can see here that the days on market currently sit at 59 in Noosa, and it's actually increased from December by a total of 7 days. So previously in December it was idling at around 52 days, and now as of March 2022 it's currently sitting at 59 days. So essentially properties are taking an additional 7 days to sell than what it was selling in December last year. So if we looked at that overall, in terms of a 59-day average days on market per property, I'd say properties are taking roughly around 3 to 4 weeks to be put under contract and then eventually selling after an average of 30 days. So that's giving us a total of around 59. So in terms of properties taking that long to sell, it's not as hot as what it was during the COVID period or during that low interest rate buying frenzy when a lot of buyers were active in the market and properties were selling at premium prices, as well as very fast with those days on market numbers were very low. Here you still have some wiggle room if you're an active buyer out there to potentially get something in the marketplace, have a good shop around before, and then put something under contract rather than a property that you like comes straight on the market and all of a sudden it's under contract. So if you are a buyer, it's something to be mindful of, that you do have a bit of a wiggle room there now and a bit of a buffer to go out and find something, shop around, and use the quiet period, or what might be deemed as a less of a busy period in terms of active buyers out there in the marketplace. But it has overall, from my days on market point of view, for properties to still sell in the first couple of weeks, still shows that the demand side is still pretty healthy, but it's not an absolute buy frenzy out there. And you have to be mindful that there are markets within markets. So there will certainly be suburbs within Noosa that have a lot lower days on market, and various types of properties that have a lower day on market. But this is the overall average for the Noosa Shire area. So you just have to be mindful of that. So if you are an active buyer, there could be properties out there that you absolutely love that might go under contract instantly, and you might miss out. But on average, what's happening in Noosa, it takes roughly around 59 days to sell. We can see here that online search interest rates currently sit at around 2,400 unique views for the first quarter of 2023, and this represents a 33% decrease from the previous quarter. So if we actually looked at this graph here, we can see that the previous quarter roughly sat just under, I'd probably say 3,800 unique views, and now it's around 2,400 online search interest views. So an online search interest is basically all of the traffic that, for each listing that goes online, all of the traffic that is captured on domain and realestate.com per listing. And that's actually a good metric to use in terms of how many buyers are out there that are potentially interested in a particular listing or property, and then we'll be able to extrapolate that out and create an average here per listing. And we can see here that it's certainly fallen off a cliff over the last quarter from the previous quarter, where it sat a lot higher in terms of a 33% decrease here. So it was a total of 33% higher only 3 months ago. So for us to sort of see that online search interest rate almost fall off a cliff here suggests that maybe there aren't a lot of active buyers now looking for property in Noosa right now. In terms of auction clearance rate from the demand side, we can see here that for March anyway in particular, the auction clearance rate sat at 33%. And if we actually looked at the total listing volumes in terms of auctions rate for the last 3 months, it's been pretty low relative to previous years, which probably suggests that there's not a great deal of appetite from agencies and agents within town to take properties to auction now. I think a lot of agents may have a preference now to rather take a property to market on realestate.com and market the hell out of a property to garner more interest, as opposed to going to an auction now. However, there still appears to be properties going to auction. But if we were to average out what the auction velocity looked like for the last 3 months, we probably can see here that I reckon it would have sat at around 6 to 7 as an average, a rolling average for the last 3 months. So for 33% clearance rate of 6 to 7 properties, that's roughly around 1 or 2 of those properties selling at auction at any given time. So it's not a large amount of transaction volume. So the auction levels, we like to look at them to really diagnose and see what's happening. It does give us some really good insight. However, when you look at some of these regional areas like Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast, regional Queensland, the auction clearance rate data isn't really the same as Sydney, Melbourne, etc., where they really tell us what's going on in the marketplace. These regional areas tend to be a lot different, so we don't look too much into it, but however, it's good to get an understanding of what's going on in the auction scene. And it also gives buyers, I always say this, an opportunity to even check out the auction scene, see what properties are selling for, see what properties are getting passed in for, so you can get an idea of what's going on in the marketplace. But also, a lot of these properties that are going to auction aren't selling and they're being passed in. There might be an opportunity there for a buyer to come up and snap up an opportunity, because there is not a lot of demand at these auctions. It could present as a great buying opportunity there if you are an opportunistic buyer right now. So overall, if we broke down and looked at what the absorption rate looks like for Noosa, and the absorption rate, all it essentially is for the last 3 months, this was the total amount of listings, and of the total amount of listings that came on the market, this was the total sales, and that gives us an absorption rate. And we can currently see here that it sits at 47% during the January to March period in 2023, and it's actually slightly down from 59% during October to December 2022. So that's very interesting there to see that the absorption rate has fallen by, I'd probably say, the best part of 11% there over the last 3 months to what it was as of October to December 2022. So basically, we've seen a market here in Noosa based on these absorption rates where listing volumes have increased and maybe demand has decreased, and now we're starting to see that as a result, the absorption rate starting to taper off and reduce and adjust here based on the amount of transactions now that are happening in the marketplace. So overall, if we were to look at that as an absorption rate, I'd probably say it's not a healthy absorption rate. I'd like to really see, from a demand point of view, the absorption rate sitting between 60 or 70. Then we'd sort of know we're in a really strong market. We're probably more moving into a buyer's market here, which is really good for buyers, but it's not as strong for sellers when those absorption rates are sitting below 50%. But if we actually then looked at what those numbers look like individually, we can see here that there were a total of 160 sales between January to March 2023, and a total of 340 listings for that same period, and that gives us that 47% absorption rate there for Noosa. If we were to poke our head over and look at what's been going on in terms of the rental side, because the rental side also can play a critical role in pushing what happens on the buy side as well. A lot of people like to initially rent first, get familiar with the marketplace, then buy, and it could be a prerequisite to a market, particularly with the median house price surging along, if vacancy rates and rents are increasing in an area, because that pushes people then over into the buy side of the market. So we can see here the median rent continues to follow the rising trend, now sitting at $775 per week. This is for houses in Noosa. I've got units or apartments here. This data is just for houses only, so $775 per week for houses in Noosa, and it's actually up $10 or 1.5% since December 2023. So we can look on this data here. We've just seen this, median rent continue to grow in Noosa since 2020, and doesn't look like to be slowing down anytime soon, up 1.5% over the last 3 months. If we actually then looked at that in terms of an overall increase for your rent to be rising on average $10 every 3 or 4 months. If you extrapolate that over a 12-month period, 10 by 4, you're looking at a market here where rents are increasing by roughly $40 per annum, which is quite scary, particularly for low-income earners in the area that are in need of rental accommodation. This as a percentage of their income now, when you start to move into $800 to $1,000 per week, it's really chewing into people's income levels there. And if you're out, I'd probably say on average, and particularly for low income earners, that $800 to $900 a week now is a lot more than 30% of your income for sure in Noosa, particularly those lower income earners, maybe that are in the hospitality sector or in other lower paying industries and sectors within the area. But yeah, median rents continue to grow in Noosa and up $10 or 1.5 since December 2023. In terms of vacancy rates, we can actually see here that it's actually been a downward trend, which is good. So it's now sitting at 2.4% with a total of 63 vacancies currently available for rent in March 2023. So 2.4% vacancy rate or 63 vacancies in total actually shows here that the market in terms of the vacancy rates is starting, some of that pressure is starting to be released now. It's not as tight as what it was, I'd probably say, in the early part of 2022, where it sort of sat at around 2%, and also in 2021 where it was almost at around 1.5%. So yeah, it's good to see that the rental vacancy rates are starting to loosen a bit and more stock is coming onto the marketplace, which allows for renters to enter into accommodation in the area, which is really good. But overall, yeah, we can see that there is been a little bit of pressure here released in the marketplace. But I think if you're an investor overall, no doubt, based on the size of Noosa and this amount of vacancies, that's still pretty tight relative to the macro demand, micro demand, and just the size of the township in itself in terms of its population, job opportunities, prospects for the area. To only have 63 vacancies at any given time available for rent, it's still a pretty tightly held rental market here in Noosa. If we were to summarize and sort of break down what I believe is happening in the marketplace, so you can use this information and data to help navigate the marketplace and decide what you want to do, whether or not you want to buy or sell your property very soon. So if we were to look at some of the high-level summary and trends we've seen over the last 3 months, just on the supply side first and foremost. So from the supply side, we can certainly see that listing volumes have increased. Inventory levels have also ballooned out as a result. So when listing volumes increase and inventory levels also increase, then we certainly know there that there's not enough demand there to make that inventory pool contract. So we've certainly seen a market there where the median house price is flatlined because of this increase in listing volumes and this increase in inventory overall. So that's an interesting one there, where listing volumes have went up after the Christmas and New Year period, and it's now on track to reflect a lot like what it reflected for the last 3 or 4 years in Noosa in terms of averaging around 130 listings per month. And we can see here that the median house price has flatlined based on that velocity of listings, which is very interesting. That just basically goes to show that if 130 properties came onto the market every month in Noosa, we might start to see that median house price start to retract and erode away, because there's just not enough demand to sustain a growing median house price based on that listing velocity. If demand was high and the listing velocity remained the same, then we'd see that inventory pool contracting, and then we'd see that median house price continue to grow if demand was still high based on that listing velocity. So that's very interesting to know here overall, that the current listing velocity is maybe a bit too much for the demand side of the market right now. If we looked at and what that tells us on the demand side, the data speaks clearly to us, and it does tell that is that we've seen that happen on the demand side because days on market has increased. So properties that are coming onto the market aren't selling right away. So that suggests that there isn't a whole lot of pent-up demand now. People can still shop around, but there isn't that instant frenzy where something goes online, something gets consumed up. So demand is starting to taper off because days on market, the data has suggested that, with that increase now sitting at 59 days. We've certainly seen the online search interest decrease as well from 3,800 to now 2,400 unique views per listing over the last quarter. So that demand has dropped. Interest rate, auction clearance rates still pretty low relative to the listing velocity of auctions, and then we've seen that absorption rate overall completely reduce as well, now sitting under 50%. So based on all of this, what's happening on the supply side and the demand side, probably seeing signs here of a property market starting to enter into a retraction in Noosa. So we're calling it now. I think the market is starting to certainly retract now. It's showing signs of that, and the underlying factors that are causing this appears to be falling on the demand side. So there's nothing wrong with the listing velocity on the sales side. I think that looks okay, but there's just not enough demand in the marketplace now to continue to allow for that median house price to continue to surge along. So the retraction is solely dependent, or the retraction of the median house price comes back to what's been happening on the demand side. So this just isn't enough demand in the marketplace there, with those absorption rates sitting really low. So overall, I think that we're starting to see a Noosa property market here skew to the favour of property buyers. And as a buyer's agent, this is something that I love, to be able to help buyers navigate the marketplace, but also to, be in positions where buyers have the upper hand in a marketplace is always very, very good. But yeah, guys, that's sort of what's happening in and around Noosa from the supply side and the demand side, and that's a summary of some of the trends that we're seeing and our diagnosis of the marketplace right now. If you do have any questions pertaining to what we've discussed, or you want to unpack this further, feel free to reach out. Again, you'll see our details here. You can visit us on our website, give us a call, book in a call, have a chat. We are the only buyers agency that I know of in Queensland that work exclusively for geographically challenged buyers. So we don't represent anyone locally. Our priority and our focus is to add value to those that are geographically challenged. So if you're interstate, international, you want to buy a property in Noosa, feel free to reach out to the Sunshine Life team. Thank you guys. My name is Troy Sabasini, owner and head of research. Over and out. Cheers.